Abusia, Medura live in what Pan Africa Parliament. Yes. Now we share the brilliant submission of Ghana. Yeah, Mrashi Bedra for Edo Mukoyana. Zenator de na no atio. We brofa walker. Minim say when I brochre dia do I can barely tell, but lady no brilliant. Like when my dear Emma another precred baby or Cotino say I want to speak on what this my sister said. Just say resurrecting Dafeamekpor made we rap the energy crack I am washing no like energy. Sata my assume in an video no ho and no rubesha and no what to hopa media question to na just say brilliant submission. Me mam kasa ne nwa ne kohwe Zenator shockingly or review secret on Africa. Yes, all kasa on Africa. F. Me admire members of parliament because sa Pan Africa Parliament or any is all kasa oh any is say like in terms of say a medium but so who say oh adwumu do the o kan onim the o ka say be o mutimin kasa him say profono na Zenator their name na no ate. I was Izumi stay tuned.
That actually it's a pointer to economic independence. So we're encouraging African institutions.
And because of exigencies of time, I'll try to be as quick and summarize my point. And I intend to speak on the two subject matters, the one on the budget and the one on the model law on factory. Mr. President, I listened carefully on the two presentations that were made. I think it was largely good and impressive. But on the budget, I think going to the future, we should always set out, when we want to present a budget, we should set out what our priorities were as a parliament. A and B were our priorities. And then when we present the budget should go to feed into these priorities. That would be my suggestion, my first suggestion. So that, for instance, critical areas should have been highlighted that we thought that was supposed to play a very important role in the budgeting. The members can appreciate what the outstanding issues are in the concept of what our priorities are as a continent. I hear the presenter talked about 81% rate for the 2024 budget. Respectfully, I think it's quite vague. To say 21% is quite vague. We should be elucidating on what constituted the 81%. It may be the case that the 81% success story was more of an area that we did not target or put much emphasis on. So going into the future, Mr. Presenter, I suggest you take that into consideration. Mr. President, I know you have been very passionate about funding sources, and I've heard colleagues lament on funding sources. I think it's two sides of the coin. Whilst we are advocating for more funding, we should also be advocating for the appropriate allocation and the judicious usage of the funds that has been allocated. It cannot just be one side of the coin, where we always call for funding. So we call for funding, we must responsibly also get a monitoring or up our monitoring system, where the usage or otherwise of these funds given are monitored. Mr. President, in this age of restrictions, at least we can talk about the restrictions coming from the US of A, with its attendant effect, we should be getting innovative. Mr. President, again, I know how passionate you are when it comes to these matters. One of the low-hanging fruits that we can tap into is a carbon credit. The carbon credit system is becoming admirable in the narrative of the world. For instance, I am aware of what the European Union is doing, and particularly the UAE. There is a huge potential there where member countries can plow into the carbon credit system. So we may have to revert our minds into these matters and see how best the continent could take advantage of this. As we are on the factory, let me commend you highly. I'm sure our torchbearers today will be shaking in their graves. The Kwame Nkrumah, the Robert Mugabe, the Julius Nyerere, all of them will be shaking in their graves. That the very views and vision of the continent today is made, and I feel proud as a son of the soil. But a few things though. Mr. President, don't forget, Ghana is proud that we are hosts to the Continental Free Trade Area. Without the input or bringing in work the relevance and the importance of the Continental Free Trade Area. At least it's one of the biggest free trade agreements after the WHO. And we as a continent moving forward should find a way we can appropriate this into our forward march. Market sources are all. We've also read about the Marshall Law, the Marshall Plan. What the
policies that can hinder or put end to these harms. For us as parliamentarians, as legislators, we have to support these initiatives to maintain and to protect the sovereignty of Africa. Food security is the most essential.
Giman Rawlings, Ghana.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for the opportunity to contribute to this presentation that was made and to add my voice that I do have my full support given to this model law. Indeed, the soil is key to our nutrition, and the quality of crops has a direct relation to the quality of the soil in which the crops are cultivated. Mr. President, the soil is key to our fight against the devastating effects of climate change, indeed. And as a continent, we have to ensure that as part of this, we've compiled data across the continent, which I'm sure may probably be in the book, but I'm yet to see the report myself. We have to make sure that we are doing a lot of research into our indigenous practices and incorporate these into the core of what we do in terms of our soil preservation. Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, key to this are the sovereignty of our soil, our land, and our seeds, because the two are very closely interconnected. And there are many farmers who have lost access to their lands because they cannot pay back for the loans they took to get some of the seeds which are genetically modified and not of indigenous origin. Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, the importance of our continent having a paradigm shift in how we produce and what we eat is key. Perhaps we need to be looking more at eating more of our own indigenous seeds, which will then mean that we are cultivating a lot more of them as opposed to importing or growing seeds that are foreign to our continent. Mr. President, the preservation of our green zones, our forest reserves, and of course creating buffer zones along our water bodies is also fundamental to this, and I hope that it's captured into our legal framework. If this is a first draft, I hope it does take consideration into this. Mr. President, some of the indigenous practices, such as the cultivation of groundnuts, which restore nitrogen to the soil, and crop rotation as well as the mixed cropping may be suitable alternatives to the use of artificial fertilizers, which we know actually reduce the ability of soils to retain nitrogen, would degrade the structure of soils, and of course, in the end, contribute towards greenhouse gases, which then have this vicious cycle that contributes towards the effects of climate change. I believe that if we have the soil when it's healthy, then we have definitely an investment into future generations, as opposed to the destruction of our soil in the interest of finite natural mineral resources. The other thing as well is, as a continent, have we fully mapped out the data on what our arable soil land masses are, in order to make sure that when we're looking at the exploitative industry, we are protecting and preserving some of these very important resources. Because, Mr. President, at some point, gold will not matter, oil will not matter. The only thing that will matter is our access to clean drinking water and food that has nutritional value. And that will be directly related to the quality of soil that we have. And so I hope that as part of this, with respect to the fact that we have so much diversity across the continent in terms of quality of soil, how can we factor this into the African Continental Free Trade Agreement to make sure that there's some level of equity in terms of those who may have their jurisdictions in arid areas compared to others who have lush vegetation because of the soil that they have, so that different countries on the continent that are less fortunate in terms of their access to good quality soil can benefit as part of some agreement on the continent, so that the people of this continent actually can benefit from the rich resource that we have. And soil is one of the most precious. We'll go forward generations after gold is diminished, after oil is also depleted. Thank you very much, Mr. President, for the opportunity.
And I hope it can find expression in the model law. Again, we must consciously distinguish between the allocation of farming land from estate. And for a long time, this has come up as a strong concern all across the continent. And I hope it will find expression. Now, the usage of agrochemicals and its variabilities in terms of its impact on soil. The other speaker spoke to it, how they've lived at the bank of a river without necessarily making good use of fertilizer, and yet they've harvested good harvests. Water conservation should be an important consideration because of the interface with soil and maintenance of the fertility of the soil. And so we must find a balance also in commercial farming and organic farming. More often than not, when we resort to commercial farming, then the usage of fertilizer comes in its wake because of the tonnage of productivity and the scale in terms of the hectares of farm land area that is cultivated. And we tend to yield to the usage of agrochemicals and staying away from organics. And I think this should come up as a very important matter. Yes, to conserve land, then we should also look at carbon sequestration. And we have an advantage. Soil all over Africa is fertile. Mr. President, Israel, I'm told they are able to break rocks and plant on the rocks, and it germinates. They do succeed, and they come out with bumper harvest. Africa is credited with generally fertile land. And so we must plant more trees, yes, to sequestrate absorption of carbon unnecessarily that is in the atmosphere, carbon and methane, because they interface on the soil vegetation. Now, China is, Mr. President, is turning the desert into arable land, and the huge vegetation is coming out of that. We can buy some lessons from there and appreciate how we can do it best. In Indonesia, for instance, every graduate is taxed to plant a number of trees in his or her area before you are even, I'm told, before you are even given your certificate. That is important. It's a real essence of life. And so these will be my observations. And Prof, I heard you when you speak to carbon sink. Carbon sink comes in its wake a lot of opportunities for Africa. And our challenges has been the capacity. We don't have the capacity to be able to buy into this carbon exchange narrative at the international level. So whilst we seek to build the conservation, conserve our soil resources and fertility, we should also be building our capacity across the internet. Then we can have more resource person, expert, who can profess good solution in dealing with this. So these will be my harmless suggestions, and I hope that we can take it into good stride. And let me conclude on what my good friend, the Honorable Zenator, I hope I got the Zenator, Dr. Zenator. When she mentioned groundnut, and Mr. President, it has always been something that is lost on us because of what we call azotobacter bacteria that is found in groundnut in fixing nitrogen. And it is not limited to only groundnut, even tree crops. And our farmers are so gifted that they are able to identify the tree crops that comes in fixing this nitrogen. And let's not underrate these wisdom of our farmers and consult them well in giving finality to this model law. Mr. President, thank you.
Underpinning this report, good governance and democratization of education for Africa's youth, the 21st century, revolutionizing and innovating the African education system through virtual learning. Mr. President, what do we speak of? Essentially, we are talking about online learning. And online learning is a platform that has already been deployed by many, many great universities. Even universities here in South Africa have deployed online learning for lots of their postgraduate programs all over the world. So it's essential that we as a house adopt this platform. But what troubles me regarding the contact on figures, I believe that if you look at the number of the young children or the African youth that the report seeks to touch, it's colossal. Speaker, last year, the African Union declared 2024 as a year of education for Africa. And about 2024, sometime in June, the AU, Mr. Chairman, declared education for children in Africa. The time is now. Mr. President, what are they looking at? They are looking at the removal of political, fiscal, economic, and other traditional barriers that prevent children that live on the shores of Lake Victoria or have to sit in a canoe across the lake to seek basic education. Children that are crossing River Limpopo to go and seek education in another village. Children that play on the shores of Lake Chad and yet have to live in a canoe to another village to seek education. Or children found on the banks of River Niger or Niger to seek education. Or children in my own constituency in the Volta region, in the Republic of Ghana, in Southern, that live on the shores of the Volta Lake who have to seek every morning basic education by crossing this mighty lake in a canoe. Now, the essence of rolling out online learning is essential because there's also the need for us to harmonize our curriculum. Whether, Mr. President, whether we teach in Arabic or Portuguese or Chwana or Yoruba or Swahili or English or French, if we don't harmonize the curriculum that will roll out to teach these children using this new platform, we'll still have disparities and we'll still have difficulties. And so it's essential that as we are making the call for a globalized African uniform system of teaching so that formal education can reach out to every child found in the nook and cranny, whether you are found on the foot of Mount Kenya, or you are found at the foot of Mount Kilimanjaro, or you are in a village near Mount Adamawa in Cameroon, education should reach you using this online platform, but using a uniform curriculum so that, like my brother, the senator from Kenya said, when you are issued with a certificate, this certificate will have recognition anywhere you find yourself on the continental Africa and allied island countries that joined the African Union. So, Mr. Speaker, with these words, let me conclude by touching on some figures. In the year 2000, when the African Union saw the need to begin to roll out reforms in education on the African continent, in Sub-Saharan, for instance, Sub-Saharan Africa, for instance, formal education among the young people improved from 44% to 66% by 2020. Among the youth literacy again, it improved from 66% in 2000 to 77.5% by 2020. These are figures put out by UNICEF and captured in a formal report commissioned by AU last year when the Year for Formal Education for Africa was inaugurated and launched. Mr. President, again, country to country implementation may differ. But like I said, uniformity in implementation will be important so that these policies will have a way to go. A lot of the countries are really rolling out free education, as Madagascar has done. Uganda has also followed. Ghana itself, our own country, rolled out free education from about 2017. But there's a need for massive improvement in how these are rolled out so that children who don't see the insides of classrooms are carried along using this online platform. So, Mr. Speaker, with these words, I urge the House to adopt the report ably presented by the Youth Caucus. I thank you for the opportunity.
Okay. So I, Roxanne Nelson Eche Kwame Dafeamekpor, solemnly swear that I will perform my functions as member of the Pan-African Parliament to the best of my ability and with honor and dignity in the service of the people of Africa. To that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the African Union and will preserve, protect, and defend the constitutive act of the African Union and the protocol to the treaty establishing the African Economic Community relating to the Pan-African Parliament as by law established. And 3, I will promote adherence to the principles of good governance, democracy, human rights, international humanitarian law, peace, stability, and all objectives of the Pan-African Parliament. So help me God. I so affirm.
Honorable President, this brings to an end the list of...
For giving me the floor, I would like to thank the Financial and Monetary Affairs Committee for their 2 presentations, and I also like to laud the initiative of making available this module law to us. It's an essential tool to strengthen access of SMEs, African SMEs to funding and foster the private sector growth on our continent. Factoring, as you know, enables companies to rapidly mobilize funds and resources from their credit or debt. But in Africa, despite the size of SMEs in our economy and their importance, accounting for more than 90% of the entrepreneurial fabric, access to loans is one of the key impediments to the development. This modular meets